All right. Welcome into another episode, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in this week, and hope you're also able to tune in last week when we had a little two-part series from a recent workshop that I did. Definitely go check those out. Some good stuff there. But today, have another fantastic guest on the podcast. I'm excited to introduce all of you to Dr. Casey Lynn from Unbound Potential Chiropractic. Her and her husband, Dr. Bob, just recently started Unbound Potential Chiropractic. And Dr. Casey is a native of the North, born in Alaska and raised in northern Minnesota. So she loves the snow. That's why she's here in Maine. Dr. Casey earned a bachelor's degree of science in business management from Augsburg College in Minneapolis, Minnesota, while she was playing ice hockey. She found the importance of maintaining optimal function and the opportunity to live a better life through chiropractic care while she was there. She continued that education at Sherman College of Chiropractic, where she also obtained an advanced certification in torque release technique and a Webster certification. She is a member of the International Pediatric Chiropractic Association and the Westbrook BNI group. Her passion lies in education of the local community, including schools and families of Scarborough. She knows that through neurologically based chiropractic care, families, pregnant moms, babies, and children may live a life of unbound potential. Now, Dr. Bob had a little bit of different path, studying biology at West Virginia Wesleyan College, and during his undergrad program learned much about academics, but most importantly discovered the passion of pursuing chiropractic care. Dr. Bob also attended Sherman College of Chiropractic and obtained an advanced certification in torque release technique and went through the Academy of Chiropractic Excellence program. Dr. Bob not only expresses his life passion through chiropractic care, but also through the United States Army. As a service member, he has firsthand understanding of the turmoil that military members may experience. That is why in practice, he focuses on mental health and stability, allowing the body to heal and progress to its unbound potential. I love all of that, Dr. Casey. Thank you so much for joining me here on the podcast.
You're welcome. Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to have a conversation about what I do and why my sort of chiropractic care might be a little bit different than traditional chiropractic. We didn't even dive into that yet, but thank you for having me.
Of course, yeah, and I love I do love your what you are all about. The name Unbound Potential. It just speaks to the potential that we all have, and sometimes we need a little help finding that, right? A little help unlocking that from a health and wellness perspective. So, tell me, and actually, even before I continue, thank you to Dr. Bob for his service. He's over in. We talked a little bit before we started the podcast. He's over in Germany right now. So thank him for his service, and thank you both for that sacrifice that you're both making while he's over there. So I really appreciate that. So tell me a little bit about how you both decided to start this practice and what went into coming up with Unbound Potential and how you treat your clients.
Sure. Okay. So where to start? So Dr. Bob and I met in school, and we really knew that we wanted to open a practice together. We knew that we wanted to develop a relationship with whatever community it was that we stepped into. And we wanted to be able to provide our specific type of chiropractic care. And we did a lot of research to find our specific type that we wanted to do. So like I mentioned, we'd use a technique that is non-traditional. So it's called torque release technique. And what we really hope to do is to provide a really stable foundation for folks to be able to relax and release the tension off their nerves and to be able to move forward to their unbound potential. So for that, we knew that we wanted to open up practice. We moved from South Carolina to school to, we moved to Scarborough, Maine, about this time last year, actually.
Yeah.
We opened our practice in January. So we're on a mission to provide that service to our community. And at the moment, Dr. Bob is overseas and he'll be back with us eventually.
Yeah. Awesome. That's great. Yeah. When you have a real specific vision like that, it's very easy to get some traction and keep the ball rolling. And having been established in an area for a while and then doing that myself about a year ago, I commend both of you for doing it in an area that you didn't have roots in. That's awesome. You really hit the ground running there, and you're already helping people. That's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. Since we're both from different parts of the country, it was a hard choice. Like, who do you go back to, one family versus the other? What does that look like? And so we decided to make our own home. We did a lot of research and we traveled around the country, and we found the community of Portland and just greater Portland in general, and traveled through Maine, and we absolutely loved it. And I'm really glad we made the choice to be here.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love living where people want to come and vacation. we get to enjoy those things a lot more often than those people that crash here for a week or two in the summer, which is really great.
Yeah, actually, just the other day I got done with practice around like 5:30, packed up my bags, and I was prepared. I had my backpack with me and I headed straight to the beach because it was a beautiful day.
Awesome.
And I was like, where else in the world are you going to be able to do this? So
right. Yeah. And not put up with all the other things that come with that area. Right. I mean, we complain about traffic, but we don't really have it. Right.
Oh,
there are maybe other places in the country where you can just pack up and go to the beach, but not without sitting in potentially hours of traffic and, trying to have just enough room to put your towel down because of all the people. Yeah, it's fantastic. Anyways, that's not why we're here. We could talk about how great Maine is all night, but we're here to learn a little bit more about you. So tell me just a little bit more about why you and Dr. Bob use the practice model you do with the torque release technique. What was there something, because I know you both got that certification in school. We heard that in your bios, but was there something in school that led you down that path? Is that part of what your chiropractic school teaches and wants to teach, their philosophy? What kind of led you down that path versus what some people think of traditional chiropractic, which is the snap, crackle, pop manipulation type of care?
Great question. So I was a chiropractic patient long before I knew that I wanted to be a chiropractor. And what the technique was that they used was the more traditional snap, crackle, right? And I saw this doc for years and I never let him adjust my neck because I was never comfortable with it. Because I knew myself and I knew my body, and that wasn't something that I felt comfortable with. And so for me to go into school, I completely valued what chiropractic could offer a human and their healing potential. But I knew that I couldn't provide a service that I couldn't receive myself.
Sure.
So I did some intentional soul searching, and we took some different classes in school, and we found this technique that really focuses, like I said, on the neurology of the body. So I'm going to give you a metaphor. So the way that I like to look at the nervous system is like the strings on a guitar. Okay, so the guitar has the tension cord at the top, and then you can also strum it at the bottom, right? So similar to the top being your head, and the strumming would be the bottom at your base, your pelvic sacral area. And so what can happen over time with the human body with different stressors in our lives is the tension cords can either be too lax, and so it's not playing that perfect harmony, right? Or it can be too tight, and once again, it's not playing that perfect harmony. So how can we address the body in a way that we can look at the nerves and the tension on them so that we can express your fullest potential and you can express your fullest harmony into the world, right? So with more traditional chiropractic, or actually, I take that back. When people hear of the pressure being placed on a nerve when they have a pinched nerve, in that analogy, that would be if one of those strings breaks, Okay, like all of a sudden you have so much pressure that your body has to relieve it in some way. And this is going to be the safest way for it to do so, is to basically put you out of commission, right?
Sure.
You
Yeah.
get one of those pinched nerves in your back and like, that's it. Your body is really telling you, please stop. Let's lay down. Let's rest. Let's have somebody help you. Right.
Right.
And, where was I going with that? So traditional chiropractic would be to take a look at those bones and put one of those bones back into alignment, taking pressure off of the nerve in that area. But what if we can address those nerves before they even get to the tension point that leads to that breaking?
Sure.
So that's where our technique really comes in. We're able to analyze the tension of the nerves and really establish a baseline for your body to be able to express its unbound potential before we get to the breaking point where those nerves are just like really asking for help.
I love that. Yeah. Prevention is the best form of treatment, right? An ounce of prevention is worth pounds of treatment, right? I think that's I might be ad-libbing the saying there, but that's that gets right down to it. And I think I think that's a pretty admirable cause for your field as well. I mean, your field in general is has always been treated as a pretty good first line of defense for certain things, but it still is much more common to see people that already have a problem than to see people that are looking for more of a prevention. Now, I know I try to do this with all my clients, and I know you do this with yours as well. We like to get all those people to a point where once we have that initial issue taken care of, we get into more of that maintenance and prevention. But doing that in the first place, I think, is a fantastic way to help people feel a lot better, a lot sooner, with a lot less disruption and a lot quicker results too in their life. Because if we're not treating a ton of pain and treating someone who's in that space where their body isn't letting them do certain things or is making them weary of doing certain things, people tend to get better a lot faster. So that prevention model is key, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, most people don't necessarily come to me because they feel great and they just want to make sure that their nervous system is working fabulous at 100%. Like,
right.
If I get that person that walks through my door one day, we'll have a party afterwards.
Yeah, right.
But people that generally come into my practice are expressing some sort of aches, pains, misfunction, some sort of health concern that they're being directed to come see me, right? Same thing with you. A lot of times people have gone and done a lot of extra work on their own, or they have really been invested in the medical world, and then something leads them to our doors. And I'm always so thankful for that. But one of the reasons I'm so passionate about educating the community is because I would love for people to know that we can help them before it gets to that point.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, we don't have to wait until our body is trying to fully protect itself and put us out of commission to get those things taken care of. When it's that nagging coming and going pain, it's like, this is the second time in a few months I felt it, but it always goes away. That's the time to get it taken care of, folks. That's right. And the other thing I really like about that is this isn't just a way to promote what it is that we do, but what it also really does by doing that, we're making sure that we don't involve other areas as well, right? Like there's a cascade of events that can happen when we start compensating for things that we just kind of let go on and on and on, and sometimes it's not necessarily the severity of the problem that is there that holds people back from getting better as quickly as they want. And it's all of the other compensations that have developed because of that, right? That we've got to look. Well, one, we should be looking at a broader picture when we're treating somebody, anyways. But regardless of that, the compensations that tend to take place when we're in that kind of pain is pretty profound, and adds into, we live in a society where people want to get better yesterday. and,
Yes.
and with some of the things that you treat, a lot of things that you treat, and I know a lot of the things that I treat, that's somewhat impossible to do, but it can get further complicated when we develop some of those compensations too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm super passionate about too is working with pregnancy and pediatrics, right? And so people think like, well, why would children, especially infants, why would they ever come into a chiropractic practice? Well, they're not able to necessarily tell you that they're in pain, right? But their misfunctions express themselves in a different way. So their compensations, we'll call them, express themselves in a different way, right? So this little 10-week-old infant, has been having like really great digestion, no problems, until one day mom notices he hasn't gone to the bathroom today. And then she notices the next day, he still hasn't gone to the bathroom. And then the day after that, she's like starting to get really concerned. Oh my gosh, my child has still yet to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And so what does that look like in their spine? Well, that's one of the things that we can help these little ones with is not only digestion, but it can also be allergies, infections, inability to latch, inability to thrive, things of that nature that can honestly be caused by the birthing process, because not only is the birthing process traumatic for mama, but it can also be traumatic for baby. And we know that if one of those bones gets moved out of alignment in the birthing process, it can lead to some of these complications down the road that unfortunately a lot of people tag as just common childhood illnesses. But these are one of the things that if we can get their spine checked, get the pressure being relaxed and released from those nerves, their body can express their fullest potential, right? And they can adapt and heal from some of these early traumas so that as they grow older, hopefully they won't have a lot more of these compensations and these aches and pains and dysfunctions.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And one of the things that kind of comes to my mind when you're talking about that is a father of a 2-year-old and having seen the birthing process and understanding that all pretty well. I would also feel a lot better if that was something that I was seeking out or that was suggested to me or whatever the case might be, that you'd use that, as you described it, gentler technique in that situation, because the idea of a purposeful snap, crackle, pop, as we called it earlier, using the hands and whatnot in an infant, even without any sort of medical knowledge that I do have, would make me, it still makes me a little nervous with the knowledge that I do have, but without any, I would be like, no, I don't think that's for me or my child. But that gentler technique can still have the effect on the nervous system and the tissues around that nervous system you're looking for. And it's not nearly as potentially provocative as some of the other techniques could be.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a lot easier for, like you said, parents to get behind, when they're that little, nobody wants to hand their child over to a stranger, let alone somebody who could potentially be cracking or popping their neck, right?
Right. Right, exactly.
So you're right. With this technique, it's much gentler and it's much easier for parents to get behind the idea. And even if they did understand before, this technique just opens a whole nother window for them to be able to be more accepting of it. Sure. And it can also be helpful with pregnant mamas too, right? So same idea. A lot of people aren't super comfortable with the idea of the traditional chiropractic while they're pregnant. But when you're pregnant, your body is going through so many changes. Your hormones are changing on a daily basis. All of a sudden you're growing this belly and you're putting pressure on different parts of your spine. And I mean, day to day, you have a completely different hormone composition that's being flooded through your body, right? So
Yeah.
how can we help normalize and stabilize that so that you aren't gaining some of these aches and pains? And with that, morning sickness can be something that chiropractic can really help with too. I think a lot of people aren't aware of that.
Sure.
But if there's tension in your spine that is affecting your digestion or your stomach or your food sensitivities, relaxing the tension in those areas can have a huge effect on that for those mamas too. And using this technique that's so much more gentle, just it seems to be something that people are a lot more willing to look into or to be committed to.
Yeah, definitely. And you're right. I think a lot of people don't think about that because we don't think of some of our internal organs, like our digestive system, having a lot of nerve component, right? It's not when most people think of nerves, they think of, oh, they help us move our muscle, they help me feel things, they talk to my brain, but they don't necessarily think that the nervous system has to go to all of our organs to make them work as well, right? And all of those nerves that go to that area come from the middle of the spine, right? That's where all of that section of the nervous system, those nerves in our mid back, our thoracic spine, all go to those internal organs. So yeah, some certain amount of tension or resonance in that nervous system, whether it's from a tight joint, a tight muscle, whatever the case might be, can certainly, I could certainly see how that could have effect on things. And there's also not a lot of room in that area when mom's pregnant. So that has a certainly can have an effect on things. Sure. As we talk about this a little bit and putting my healthcare brain on a little bit, this is sort of curiosity for me, but I think it'd be good for people listening to this as well. With this technique that you do use, would you say that you're attacking things a little bit more from just general tension being placed on a nervous system rather than something actually being sort of out or needing an adjustment? Like, is there a little bit of somewhat of like a shift going on in your field where it's not necessarily that something is like completely like out of place or not where it's supposed to be, versus there's some tension in this tissue. Maybe there's a tight side of the spine rather than a loose side of the spine, or vice versa, that's putting stress on that nervous system. Is that philosophy different that way, or is it just a different way to kind of get after some of the same things of actually putting something in place?
That is a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that before. I think there is a shift in the community. The technique that I use has been around for 100 years.
Okay.
Years? Don't quote me on that.
A long time.
For a while. Yeah.
A long time.
But some of these other chiropractic techniques, like the more traditional ones, right, they've been around a lot longer. So I think there's just a lot more awareness around the fact that we don't need to use that amount of force to make changes in the body.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you are to swipe your hand like up the back of your leg, right, and you get like the goosebumps, like that has a huge effect on your nervous system to the point where like your whole body gets shivers, your hairs stand up on your arms, and we're just like really starting to notice that it's not necessarily needed to have that large amount of force. But is there like a practical time and place for that? There is. If there is a bone that is like truly out of alignment and like truly needs to move back into place, then that technique is like fabulous for it. Absolutely. I think that's. I'm not really sure what more.
That was a great answer. No, I mean the big reason I asked that is I was taught in school from a much more traditional manual therapy PT model, right? So we can go on and get additional training in manipulation, right? Which is the more, as you've mentioned, a more traditional version of chiropractic. It's not the same philosophy per se, but we can get trained in some of those techniques. But from a more traditional manual physical therapy model, where we're not necessarily doing a manipulation, but we're doing sort of a joint mobilization or a soft tissue mobilization or a nerve mobilization or something like that, the traditional way of thinking is that when I'm doing a joint mob, I'm having an effect on the joint, right? We're moving the joint this way and this for this reason to improve this type of motion or this type of dysfunction, whatever the case might be. But as research and as time has developed, we're starting to realize, hey, when my hands are over that segment of a spine, let's look at it from the spine. I'm not just pushing on the joint. There's muscle tissue there that I have to push through to get to that joint to actually move it and have an effect on it. There's nerve tissue that goes to that soft tissue. There's nerve tissue that comes out in front of that joint. You're affecting a lot more. And the research on manual therapy in general in our field has shown that it's really more of an effect on the nervous system that's having the most positive impact, rather than are we truly actually able to measure how much improvement of actual mobility specific to that joint that we gained, right? Because when you add in all those other variables, it's really hard to say with putting my thumbs over the joint of that spine that I'm having this amount of force directed solely into that joint, right? So I was kind of curious if that same shift was sort of happening, that saying like, hey, what we're really doing here is having an effect on the nervous system, right? Whether we're, because that amount of force we put through, whether it's from a hands-on mobilization or manipulation, or whether it's through the technique that you use, there's still a lot of variables there, right? Of how much of that force gets transmitted directly to the joint or the bone or whatever the case might be. But the important thing is it helps with the person's pain and dysfunction, right? And we know those mechanisms come from the nervous system. So that's, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you're asking now. And it's actually super interesting because there's so many different types of chiropractic techniques. And like you said, like you get the opportunity to learn some about manipulation. You can like go on and learn more about that if you choose to. But I mean, there's some chiropractic techniques that don't do any like they don't use any high velocity at all. So there's some that just do light touches on the body to really relax tension around the spine and then have an effect on the nervous system. So it's just I guess really it's all about like how you look at it, right? Like you can affect the bone to affect the muscle to affect the nerve, or you can affect the muscle to affect the bone to affect the nerve, or you can affect the nerve, or how many other ways can we do that? There's a lot.
Exactly. Yeah. There's, like I said, there is a lot of variables, but I think as our research within those fields has gotten better, we've realized that some of the old research maybe didn't control for all those variables as well as what our research does now. And we're realizing that some of those variables, especially when we're talking about hands-on care, you just can't control for, because there's in a real live human, there's no way to not affect the muscle around the spine in order to affect the spine. It's just impossible to do, right? So we're learning more about how all these nerve pathways work, and we're learning more about how all these things interact a little bit. And we're realizing like, hey, we might not be doing the exact thing we used to believe that we were doing, but at the end of the day, we're still having a positive effect. So when it's used correctly, it's effective, right? So
yeah. And I love that about like all medical care, right? Like there's so much research, there's so much knowledge, and everybody's trying to continuously improve their care, which is one of the reasons I absolutely love the technique that I use too, is because they're constantly coming out with new ways that they have found that can affect the body in a positive manner.
Yeah, definitely. In healthcare in general, in science in general, the science is changing all the time as we get better at learning about the science, right? So keeping up with what's coming out new and adapting to it in a positive way, and seeing that positive effect in the community that we serve is great. It's what we have to do. It's what we signed up for as healthcare providers, right? That's the lifelong learning aspect of what we do.
Yeah, no getting around that one.
Yeah, awesome. So what are now that we're done talking, that conversation was more for us, by the way, Dr. Casey. That was I'm sure people listening will get something out of it. But getting back to a little bit more about what you do over at Unbound Potential, what are some of your, actually, I love answering this question myself. So what are some things that you are able to do in your practice that people are surprised by, right? Like everybody has perceptions of what a chiropractor helps people with, or what a physical therapist helps people with, what a DO helps people with. What are some things that you help people with that you have found really, really effective in your patient care throughout your career, that people are like, oh geez, I didn't even really know that would be something that you could do?
Yeah, that's a great question. I like that one. So of course, many people know chiropractors for neck and back pain, right? But the nervous system, like we talked about earlier, goes to all the different organs, tissues, functions in your body, right? So like right now, your heart's beating, your lungs are breathing, and you're not controlling any of that. It's your brain sending messages through your nerves to your body. So there are so many different functions in the body that can have an effect by chiropractic care. But if we want to narrow it down a little bit, I really enjoy helping people through migraines and dizziness. That's a really big one.
Yeah.
Pregnancy pains, we talked a little bit about earlier.
Yeah.
And balance and stability is something that I don't think a lot of people think of for chiropractic also. So for example, I had this older gentleman who he was starting to get some tremors, and he honestly didn't feel comfortable putting his pants on in the morning without like sitting and holding himself up on the wall. It was becoming a really hard process for him because he was unstable. And so you could look at that from two perspectives, right? Like you might be able to help that gentleman at the same time because he might have some weak muscles, and he might need some support in his knees, in his hips, and like in his core probably. But what we were able to do for him was relax and release some of the tension off of those nerves, and his body was able to re-stabilize himself. And so by the end of care, he was able to put his pants on in the middle of the room. He was so excited. He actually started to ride his bike. So his equilibrium started to improve, which was fabulous. So yes, dizziness, instability, things of that nature. And I'm always, once again, passionate about the kiddos. So ear infections, sinus infections, colic, things of that nature for those ones. Like I said, they could be a lot of times what people consider normal, like common sicknesses for little kids, but really it's something that we can really help people with.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And yeah, the balance and dizziness part really piqued my interest, because part of what I've done as continuing education is getting a vestibular rehab certification. So helping people treat vertigo and actually using something that we don't touch on a ton, even in PT school, is retraining the vestibular system while we retrain static and dynamic balance. So again, putting the pants on in the middle of the room would be somewhat of a dynamic balance activity. You're not taking steps while moving your upper body or anything, but you're moving multiple limbs at the same time while standing in one place. So it's kind of a static to dynamic balance activity. And yeah, the areas, as you know, that relate to our balance are our eyesight, our nervous system, being able to feel where we are in space, being able to feel the floor underneath us, our muscles, range of motion in our joints, and the vestibular system all relay messages back to the specific areas of the brain that they go to via our nervous system. So yeah, training those areas through better strength, better range of motion, retraining some of the nervous system from an actual physical balance perspective and from a vestibular perspective, you're right, could all get better if those nerves are talking to each other better, and they all start from the brainstem, which goes to the upper part of the neck area. That's
yeah. And it's really incredible because the very top bone in your spine is going to be like right behind your mastoids, or like if you got your earlobes, then you got your bones that's going to be right behind your jaw right there. And that is your C1, or your atlas bone. And it actually has 78 trillion nerves that travel through it. And so if you have tension in the upper part of your spine, it can cause a cascading effect that goes down to the rest of your body, right? And so one of the things that we really worked on with him was establishing more relaxation of those the nerves in that upper part of his spine, so that we could take the pressure and tension off of those. And like you said, then all the messages that are stemming from his brain and going straight to his body were reestablishing themselves and increasing their communication, which was fabulous.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think back to, and you know, when people like us help people with things like headaches, the amount of relief you get, and everybody can relate to this, the amount of relief you get when a really serious like headache goes away goes way beyond just what you're feeling in your head, right? Like almost it feels like almost your entire body is sort of released from that. And the nerves that can cause headache pain, as well as the nerves that can go to all those areas of balance we just talked about, and anything downstream nerve wise from that area, it can be clearly affected by that one area at C1. So that's that's powerful. The 78 trillion thing I did not know, though. I would not want to be the person that had to count those.
I've always wondered, like, how many times did they count to get that number?
Right. 78 trillion 997. I mean 90. Oh shoot, let's start over. Yeah, no, that's really fascinating. That's awesome. Well, great. I love asking that question because it's I think there's a lot of different providers out there that do a lot of different things that people don't know that they do. So I love getting that information out to people. So that's great. That's fantastic. So before we wrap this up, I do have 2 questions that I ask all of the podcast guests, sure. 2 of our final questions. But before I do that, tell everybody a little bit about how they can find you, where they can get more information about yourself, about Dr. Bob, about Unbound Potential Chiropractic. Where can people find you? How can they get more information?
Sure. So our website is Unbound Potential Chiro, CHIRO @gmail.com. And that will be the same for our social handles. So Facebook, Instagram, Unbound Potential Chiro. And our office phone is 207-303-0057. I would absolutely love to have a conversation with anybody who is interested, or just has some questions, like, can chiropractic help with this? I would love to have a conversation with you about that.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll make sure we have all of that in the show notes and description of the episode as well, so people can reach out and answer any questions. So, ready for the final two questions?
Let's do it.
You didn't know there was going to be a test.
I did not.
So the first question is, what is your definition of strength?
Oh, interesting. The ability to have confidence and clarity in your purpose for the world, I think brings so much strength into a person's life. So maybe a different form of strength than you were intending, but that would be my definition.
That's great. No, that's why I love asking these questions. We get a different response literally every time. It's awesome. It's awesome. I love it. No, that's fantastic. I liked how you used 2 of the words from the name of the podcast as well. You used strength and purpose in there. So great job. It's awesome. And so the last question is, what is your true purpose in life, Dr. Casey?
My true purpose is to allow people to do what they love without, not even without anything. Just, I want people to be able to express themselves and to be able to do what they love on a regular basis. That is my passion. And if I can do that by helping them relieve aches and pains, so that they don't have to constantly worry about, oh, I can't go to the water park with my grandkids because I can't walk that far, or if I have a lot of stress in my life, and I just have like a lot of jaw pain, and it's really holding me back, and I feel like I can't go out to dates with folks because you never know how long we're going to be talking. And I mean, like, these are just little things, but these are real things. Like, these are real things that affect people's lives on a daily basis. And if I can help them to be able to function at a higher level so they don't have to worry about those concerns, so that they can do what they love, that's what I love.
Awesome. Love it. That's fantastic. Great. Well, can't thank you enough for this, Dr. Casey. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope everyone listening enjoyed it too. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. We got a little nerdy and I loved it. So
Of course. I love talking shop. Love talking shop. That's great. So everybody check out all of the information in the show notes and the description of the episode. So you can go find Unbound Potential Chiro on social media, or reach out directly to Dr. Casey and have any of your questions answered. Appreciate you all listening so much. If you found value out of this, which I found value, so I know all of you did, please be a friend and tell a friend. Share this with someone who could find some value out of the episode. Really appreciate listening. If you're watching on YouTube, appreciate that as well. Like the video, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when new videos come out. New episodes drop every Wednesday, so be on the lookout for that. Always love those 5-star rating reviews on Apple Podcasts as well. And with all that said, thank you again, Dr. Casey. And thank you, everybody, for listening to another episode of the Strength for Your Purpose podcast. Have a great week.